So there's your physical and spiritual karma that you come into this life with, that you're meant to work past this karma. And then once you start doing that, it brings you to your physical and spiritual talents. And then you start harnessing those talents to then work towards the physical and spiritual goals, right? And then from there, you reach the middle point, which is the soul destiny. So one of the things that I found to be the most efficient way of breaking these cycles and doing this deep-seated healing is through the Akashics. So that's where we're gonna go to kind of see what we can uncover with her and help kind of move past. I offer this cosmic blueprint reading, which is a really big in-depth reading that covers your astrology, numerology, human design, soul contracts, and tarot profile. So being able to look at all these different pieces of the puzzle for people specifically, I think is massive, because we all have our own unique blueprints, right? We all operate in different ways. How quickly do you recognize these things happening? Are you going to deal with it in a better way than you have in the past? So it's like these little tests from the universe, and all it is that integration of these lessons and breaking these cycles and patterns.
Well, awesome, Samantha. Tell me a little bit about what you do and the types of people that you serve.
So I would consider myself a spiritual life coach, healer. I teach yoga. I do energy healings with various modalities. I've kind of mapped out my own coaching methodology over the years. And through that, I'm also writing a book to kind of explain all of that and link it with real world experiences, because a lot of it is kind of bridging this gap from this ancient, like esoteric knowledge with modern day problems and issues that we all kind of encounter. So it looks different nowadays than what it might have, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, right? So yeah, there's a lot of spiritual philosophy that's within that, a lot of just really deep layered healing. And I would say the clients that I work with, they're passionate about wanting to do the work. There's a lot of people that say they're ready, and it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not all rainbows and glitter or whatever. It's really difficult work, and it can get really messy. So people that are ready for that transformation, those are the types of people that I'm working with, and people that have experienced a lot of similar stuff to me, different types of karmic cycles, relationships, things like that. People that are looking to kind of figure out what their life purpose is, that need a bit more direction, deep healing work, yeah, stuff like that.
That's beautiful. Do you feel like you are seeing more and more individuals who are having these awakenings? I mean, ever since technology became almost the forerunner for information when it comes to, like you were talking about, like ancient traditions and all of this esoteric knowledge is now bubbling up to the surface. Do you feel like you've seen that in your audience?
I have, absolutely. And I've been very surprised by certain people that I'm friends with, and I've kind of just met along the way, that are really into this stuff that you'd never guess. And it's really interesting. I had a friend of mine I've known for, I don't know, maybe 13 years, something like that. And not once did any of this ever come up. And we had a conversation over the summer, and I was like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And it just snowballed into this massive like conversation about spirituality and connecting with other stuff, and then doing some kind of like really fun like psychic training exercises with him. And he was like, I've really never told anybody about this. So yeah, I'm seeing it in very unexpected ways with people, which is amazing because you can connect and kind of draw people in that are keeping that to themselves, that they don't have anybody to talk to about it, and it kind of starts to open things up and expand from there.
Do you think that there's any connection between these people who are having these awakenings, but they still have to remain closeted because of society, or maybe their circle has a different belief system, and this, not inability, but I would say hesitation to really get elbow deep in the work? Because I agree with you, it's not always pretty, and it does require a level of intention, dedication, commitment to a routine. And sometimes if you're not being supported in your external community, you're going to be less inclined to like really do the work.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cultural stuff. There's a lot of religious factors that play into that as well. Where these people, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day that was asking about my coaching and stuff, and if it was Christian based. And my answer was no. But what I've kind of come to realize over the years is that we're talking about the same things, we're just using different words, right? So it's essentially the same stuff. So I think there's a level to it with people having a fear of the lingo and the verbiage that we're using, but at the end of the day, it's exactly what they've been doing all these years, just with religious phrases and words. So it's not that disconnected, but I think there's kind of that almost like taboo around it, that like, oh, it's not Christianity, so there's something wrong with this. So yeah, I do think there's a bit of hesitation there, and then just cultural stuff as well. I've traveled kind of all over the world, and there's certain cultures. I would say a lot of friends that I have like in the UK, they're a bit more like reserved, and they keep things kind of like close, and it's not something that might be, or what they think might be socially acceptable to kind of broadcast and talk about.
Yeah, that's interesting because my whole family is British, and when it comes to their faith belief, I don't know if it's an individual or a collective mindset, but it is very private. It is very held close to the chest. It's not something that's talked about. Um, but what I'm seeing is that people are getting curious. And
Mhm.
so that conversation with this woman who is asking you about, is it Christian based? Like, how do you navigate people's different faith beliefs? Because you and I talked about like we have to honor where this person is at, no matter what their spiritual path. It's a blessed journey. So like what types of mindset do you hold close to you to kind of help you navigate people that are in a completely different faith belief? It's tough.
I think it's a matter of being able to adapt and have a really high level of social skills, because then you can kind of more easily recognize where someone is and how you can connect to them. So you just have to be really in tune with picking up on stuff like that. So kind of using their own um verbiage or phrases, or what makes sense to them, and using these analogies and relating it to what is comfortable with them, what feels okay to them. And then I never try and push stuff on people. I kind of just gauge conversations. I had a friend of mine that I was talking to in depth one night, and she made it very clear that she doesn't believe that any health conditions that we have are based in anything like spiritual or energy based. And I very much believe that. So I knew not to push that topic any longer. You know what I mean? I'm not going to convince her. So I'm not trying to, create an argument or anything. So just kind of recognizing where people's boundaries are and just not pushing them and just kind of working with them where they are and go from there. And maybe, one day they'll open up more, maybe not, but that's entirely up to them. And it's not something we can push.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you said it beautifully, and it's this gentle navigation of, like you were saying, like using terminology that isn't necessarily attached to a particular genre of beliefs, but finding that common ground. And yeah, like if someone is closed off to something, they've already got that wall up. And so it's really not for us to push on that wall, but to bless it, because one day, like you said, they might circle back around and that conversation might pop into their head, and it's like, oh well, I'm going to go back to Samantha and talk to her about energy work, because and science is catching up. Oh my gosh, the way that science is starting to reflect what is going on in the spiritual world, like it's really the same thing with just different terminology.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's actually, yeah, science proves spirituality. Like it's incredible.
So talk to me a little bit about how you started, because I know it all began with yoga. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me
Yes.
about your
Yoga is the
journey.
gateway.
It's the gateway drug of spirituality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into yoga years ago and just fell in love with it. It gave me a lot of discipline that I really needed at the time. And because I already was fairly athletic, I was a gymnast growing up, it came very natural to me. So I loved it. And then from there, I started my own yoga retreats because I loved traveling, I loved yoga. So it just made sense for me to start hosting my own yoga retreats when I was in Ibiza. And then from there, I got in with this lovely girl that we had on the retreat that did energy healing. And at the time, I wasn't a believer. And there were a couple other things that played out with a friend of mine that did a tarot reading for me. And it just kind of blew the door wide open. And I was so curious through conversations with him and then my energy healer girl that I was like, there's no way they could have picked up on this information. There's no possible way. And it just sparked this curiosity in me. And I just kind of went down the rabbit hole and just started consuming as much information as possible in all different directions.
That is so cool. And the energy work is like, once you experience it, it's undeniable, the shifts that it makes. Um, so how do you bring yoga and energy together under the same umbrella?
Um, I think the yoga puts us, it kind of helps us become energetically aligned just by moving the body and incorporating in the breath and the mindfulness. I think that just kind of naturally brings everything into this like cohesive, I don't know. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it helps with that energy. And then in my yoga classes, I had started doing like mini little energy healings at the end while people would be in shavasana. So I love to be able to incorporate that, and I don't do it all the time. It's kind of based on the people that I have in class and what's going on. If I'm doing something one-on-one with somebody, that's definitely something that I would incorporate in if they're okay with that. I think that's just I'm all about efficiency and like saving as much time as possible. So how many of these things can I condense into one thing and maximize my time? Because we're all busy. We don't have like 3 hours out of the day to do journaling and meditation and energy healing and yoga and this and that. Like, let's get it all in at one time. So that's a cool way that I found to kind of do that for clients and myself as well.
Yeah, having that routine. I mean, for me, I can't even really stick to a daily routine because my plate is so full, but like even just 3 days a week where I can find some very efficient way to connect with that inner world, I think that that's just super key. I want to hear more about Ibiza. and your time there? Because you were there for a while, right?
I've been there on and off for, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years, something like that. I just fell in love with the place the first time I ever went. And my life goal was, how do I live here? How do I just stay here forever? And I ended up moving there 3 times now. Um, this past, I just got back to America like a week ago, and I was there for about a year, and before that I ended up moving before COVID. So that was just, it was poor timing as far as working goes and creating a business, but it was also one of the most magical times to be on the island because nobody was there and nobody's ever going to experience that again, that hopefully. But so it was really special in its own way. um and yeah, I just kind of would go on holiday for like a month, 2 months at a time, a couple times a year, started doing retreats there. It's a really special place. It's gotten a bit different over the years, especially after COVID. So I think my time is definitely done with the island, and I feel very content about that. I think I'll still go visit, but I got out of the island what I needed to.
Yeah, I think that from what I understand is there are individuals that have kind of capitalized on the draw to Ibiza for its spiritual properties, for its energy, for the retreat. Is that a little bit about what you experienced?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just such a interesting place because you do have this massive party scene. And that's what the islands become famous for. But then you also have the complete opposite side to that. And there's a really big spiritual community there. The island is on top of this like massive energy vortex. So it's undeniable. Like anybody that's gone there will tell you this. Like you can just feel it, and it draws you um, with other people that you're meant to meet, and you'll meet the most incredible people. You'll meet some really awful people as well along the way, because it does have that dualistic energy of like light and dark, party versus spiritual. So you will meet some really horrendous people. um but I have met some of the most amazing people of my life there that I am best friends with. I consider them family. So there's a heavy spiritual side there. There's, I mean, it's just so much nature to be explored that's just stunning. Esvedra is considered to be like this spiritual hub where it's said to be like the lost city of Atlantis. There's all these like myths with like the mermaids and the sirens and the pirates and like all this like really interesting history there. So yeah, it definitely draws people in. And it is, I would say, one of the best places to host retreats because you can get so much out of it if you're focusing on the right things in the island and kind of, harnessing that energy.
Yeah, how do you set yourself apart from some of those, we'll call them hijackers for lack of a better term, but I agree with you. I think that anytime that you have a community where there's a lot of like party atmosphere, you get
Mhm.
these individuals that are like, oh, let's go get a tarot reading or let's go, do some Reiki. And it's almost like trendy for them because it's popular. It's not a serious spiritual pursuit. And that's okay. That's how a lot of people have been introduced to the types of services that we provide. It wasn't on their radar, and perhaps they just wanted to taste test it. But as a business owner, you're much more productive with someone who is like, okay, I've got some crap to heal. I really want to change my life. So, like, how do you, as a professional, set yourself apart from some of those other businesses in Ibiza that are catering to the trendy fly by night type
Mhm.
clientele?
Yeah, it's interesting there because because of the party dynamic. People are coming on holiday there to go to the parties, and then they might have, a day or two where they want to go do maybe a boat day or yoga or hike or something, a bit more pleasant and uplifting. But what ends up happening is they get caught up in the party, and a lot of the holistic activities get canceled because they're too hungover. They get wrapped up in the party, which is fair. It's their holiday. You know what I mean? Like, do whatever you want. So I think for businesses like this, you really have to hone in on a specific type of client that's not there to party, that really is embodying this lifestyle. Um, and they're not going to get wrapped up in going out and canceling on you. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, you just have to kind of find the right people. And I think, it is hard because if people are coming there on holiday and they're experiencing certain services, activities, healings, whatever it is, with some of these other people that might not be the most authentic, they're not around them long enough to really pick up on that and see that. It's because they're not working with them more long term. So it does make it a bit harder for the people that are authentic. So for me, kind of developing those relationships with the locals that can get to know me and know that I do practice what I preach. And if I am struggling with, whatever it is, they can relate to me. They can be like, yeah, she's a real person too. She has her own problems. She's not just parading around as if, her shit doesn't stink, because there are people there that do that. And you're like, it's just not relatable. Like,
Yeah, and
um,
if you're there to party, you may not have your intuition online. You're really wanting to disconnect and to have um this escape from having to tune in or think about serious stuff. And so I can see where, like, just really being aligned with your core values and sticking to that, like not being opportunistic. And it's hard for us starting out because and opportunistic has such negative connotations. And all I mean by that is literally seeing an opportunity to promote yourself, connect with a potential client, but sometimes those opportunities are not for you, and you really have to stay true to your values and not chase that dollar, but really chase your highest expression of your brand and what that means to you.
yeah. And for me, I had an experience towards the end of the year that I had a friend of mine that was a devoted client supporting me. Um, and it was to the point where I was very stressed out by this person. And I felt this like guilt and responsibility because she was so supportive to me. Um, but she's not the type of person I want as a client at the end of the day. And I had to disconnect from that relationship for different reasons. But it made me really realize that, like, I don't want to work with everybody. No offense. There might be somebody better suited for you to work with, but it should be based on, do your energies align? And for me, the energy was not aligning, and it was drawing so much out of me that I was becoming depleted. So that's not in alignment for me. You know what I mean? And I had another client that was coming to yoga classes earlier in the season, and I could instinctively, instantly feel it. I was like, something is off with this one. And again, you're trying to build up this business, and you don't want to um deny clients or opportunities, but I was just like, she's just not the one. And it was really interesting because I had started one day in class implementing the energy healings in shavasana, and whatever I did stirred up something in her, and she immediately just got up and left and never came back. And I was just like, she was one of those that was definitely one of these fake spiritual people, because she does all kinds of healings, if you will. But when I would listen to her talk, I was just like, I would never want to come to you as a client. Like, she was so fear based. Like, everything was instilling fear in people. And that's not what it should be. If somebody is instilling fear in you as a spiritual leader, run. Um, so yeah, I really honed in this year on being okay with turning away certain clients and knowing that it's okay, because then that's leaving room open for the right people to come in.
Wow, you touched on so many beautiful things. I couldn't agree more. I think that sometimes that misalignment we misperceive as like you feel guilty about it at first because you want to serve, you want to help. But if it's not an alignment for you, chances are it's not an alignment for them because they have a whole different portion of their ascension path to explore before getting to this level with you. And then the other thing that popped up for me was you reminded me of a medium that I was very close with who had an extremely cultivated third eye, this ability to connect with source, but her first and second chakras were so out of whack. She was in fear. She was cheating on her husband. She was lying to her friends. She was excessively drinking. But like, I looked at her as, wow, you seem like such an enlightened person, but you really can't tackle all of this higher vibrational, higher frequency connection if you are not really balanced with this 3D incarnation as well. Like you have to walk the tightrope of being in this 3D world
Mhm.
and being aligned and being almost in harmony with your true essence and also cultivating this connection to source because you can't bypass it. You can't go around it.
And I think that's something that's really difficult, especially in a place like Ibiza, because you do have so many temptations there. And, um, I've always been the type of person that I like balance. I believe in, all this spiritual stuff, but I also enjoy having fun at the same time, as long as it's not that fun isn't taking over. And kind of, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But like you said, with the other behavioral things that she had going on, I think, if you're trying to help other people through relationships or whatever it is, that, you need to have standards for yourself. Or no, but I wouldn't listen to somebody if, like, I can't remember who it was, but I've had to tell numerous friends, like when they go to their other friends for advice, right? And then they come back to me and they're complaining about the advice that they got, and this person just doesn't understand them, or, they're just coming down on them really hard. I said, look at who this person is. Like, why would you go to that person for advice in regards to your children when they don't have children, or they're a bad mother and we know that they are a bad mother? Why is that the person you are putting any kind of emphasis on their opinion for? So, in relation to what you were saying, I would never go to someone that I didn't respect and see as a role model, or somebody that there was something that they could offer that I wanted to adapt or adopt for my own life. So, if somebody is terrible at relationships, why would you go to them for relationship coaching?
Yeah, and if a
Just common
spiritual
sense.
teacher, yeah, 100%. And if a spiritual guide or mentor is trying to disempower you, that is not the person for you. I mean, we're all human. I had this great conversation the other day about how coaches need coaches. I mean, a lot of us that are doing this type of work, we still do our own work. We are still working very hard at integrating our shadow or whatever it may be. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to F up. You're allowed to have these missteps. But if your core values are service to others and empowering other people, those are definitely big green flags as opposed to
Right.
there's a lot of fake spiritual guides out there right now that are putting all the focus on come to me for the answers or buy these courses for the answers, and it's harping on the pain points and it's making you feel insecure, making you feel like you're broken. All of those things are really big red flags. Did you see any of that in Ibiza? Like what were some of the red flags that you saw in that kind of shady spiritual community?
Yeah, I mean, with the one girl that I spoke about, she was that type of person that was very much fear based. But a number of other people that I encountered that kind of stick out in my head, it was more intuitive, that I could just tell that something wasn't right. And then through other conversations that I had later on, I confirmed it 100%. And I was like, I knew it. I knew I didn't like that person. Um, so yeah, it's a funny one. I think it's just, and it's interesting because I have a really good friend that's just, she's just so angelic and she's just the most amazing human being. And she just doesn't see this in certain people, that I'm like, that is a really just nasty, dishonest person, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, I think it takes a little bit of a special skill to kind of decipher those things sometimes.
Yeah. So tell me about your relationship with your clients. Like how obviously you and I have talked about just having these really lovingly held core values of like meeting that person where they're at. So tell me a little bit about your client journey, how it starts, how you start to cultivate that connection and what it looks like for them on their path with you.
Yeah, I think it's first about kind of getting to know what somebody's looking for, where they are, the types of things that the modalities that they've kind of worked with previously. So before I'll work with somebody, I have a coaching inquiry that I'd like people to fill out first to make sure that it is aligned. Because, like I said before, it might not be aligned. There might be a better person that I think you should work with, or there just might be something there for me that I don't feel right about. So, kind of starting with that base foundation of who this person is, what their goals are, where they currently are, if they're maybe dealing with certain issues in life that I might not have experience with, then I might not be the best person for you. But if this is somebody that is going through very similar things to me, then yes, I am just the person for you. Through conversations I've had with certain friends that have turned to clients, when I'm listening to them talk about, relationships or whatever it is, I'm like, this one girl in particular, she's working with another friend of ours that's a healer of sorts. And she was just not really happy with the results that she was getting. And she was telling me about this. And I was just like, that is not at all how I would approach the situation, because that's not what the actual issue is here. So I think kind of really just being able to listen to people first. And then from there, I offer this cosmic blueprint reading, which is a really big in-depth reading that covers your astrology, numerology, human design, soul contracts, and tarot profile. So being able to look at all these different pieces of the puzzle for people specifically, I think is massive, because we all have our own unique blueprints, right? We all operate in different ways. So it's not a one size fits all, like we've said before, where, for me personally, when I've gone to like business coaches or whoever, they're like, oh, you need to do X, Y, and Z. This is how you do it. But then when you look at your blueprint and you're like, okay, well, based on my design, I operate this specific way. This is how I'm meant to operate. So that's why what you're telling me how to run a business or how to do specific things, it doesn't feel right to me because it's not right for me. You know what I mean? So being able to do that for clients and know how they operate, how they think, what they're meant to be doing, and then you can see specifically what their purpose is, what their strengths are, what their challenges are. So when you're going through these coaching sessions with them, you have this understanding of who they are at their core and what they're struggling with. So you can pinpoint, are these karmic cycles? Is this something you're meant to be overcoming? Should you be focusing more on, a certain thing where you have a strength here and utilizing that? Or are you just kind of like beating your head against the wall over and over with things? So I think that's a huge piece to implement when you're coaching somebody. And I had hired this one business coach at one point that she incorporated in a couple of these reports. I think it was like astrology and human design. And she did my reading, but then she didn't implement any of the stuff in it when she was coaching me. And I'm like, what was the point of that? So for her, it was just all bullshit. She's just, telling people what they want to hear at first to get them in the door to take their money, and then not actually practicing what she's preaching to help them the best that she can. So for me, I think that's massive, is utilizing people's unique blueprints to help them.
Talk to me about the soul contract. How do you get that information?
So it's this book. There's not a lot of information on it online. It was this method that kind of brings in, I think like I Ching, is that how you say it? I'm not too familiar with that one, but it's kind of like some of the human design stuff, numerology, and a few other modalities kind of combined. And it gives you 6 different portions, and then your soul destiny. So there's your physical and spiritual karma that you come into this life with, that you're meant to work past this karma. And then once you start doing that, it brings you to your physical and spiritual talents. And then you start harnessing those talents to then work towards the physical and spiritual goals, right? And then from there, you reach the middle point, which is the soul destiny. So this gives you a lot of really good information on, like I said, the karma, your strengths, and that North Star, what you're meant to be doing. So when you incorporate that in with the other pieces of the puzzle, you see all these different overlaps that kind of just confirm, that is what you're meant to do. These are the things you're going to struggle to overcome, and kind of gives you a bit of a roadmap there to help you.
Wow, I can imagine that you have people that it just blows their mind, especially with the karmic cycles, because in my line of work, people are typically unconscious to those patterns. Like it's clearly showing up over and over again, but it's almost like they're either avoiding doing the work or even just disassociating because
Yeah, you don't
I don't
realize
know.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
I've got a reading I'm doing for a client later today, because I was having a conversation with her. I had referred her to a good friend of mine for a reading. And when she was kind of telling me about all of this, like stuff started just clicking in my head. And I was just like, this is definitely a karmic pattern that's playing out in all these different areas of your life. We're seeing it with your family, with your friends, in the workplace. It's on repeat. And you're banging your head against a wall. And it clicked in my head. I was just like, it boils down to like a self-worth root cause. So I'm going to be doing a reading, one that I'll be doing, and then a second one with her, together over the weekend, to kind of see if we can dive deeper into that, start to clear up some stuff, because then you see these soul contracts within like the Akashic records as well. So not just this report, I mean, you see them in various capacities. So one of the things that I found to be the most efficient way of breaking these cycles and doing this deep seated healing is through the Akashics. So that's where we're going to go to kind of see what we can uncover with her and help kind of move past.
What does that look like? Is that with like a meditation? Is there energy work involved as well?
So the Akashics in and of itself will be an energy healing. Like when you're in the Akashics, it just has its own energy. So you are picking up on that. And then you can also ask your spirit team or whoever else is there to give you healing within the Akashics. So it is in the form of a meditation. So I do this for myself, where I do like a guided meditation in my own head, where I'm kind of like journeying up into the Akashics. And you go in there and you're, with your spirit team, like looking through this like book of your life. And you can get all these like images or just information, however it comes to you. It could come like a movie, it could come as just like intuitive hits. So I did one the other day that I had some really profound results with, where trying to even think like what it was in reference to. It was a karmic thing that kept coming up. I've had some interesting things pop up recently within the past week. So I went in there to kind of like dig into that. And then I was asking Archangel Michael for just a healing before I came out of it. And he would, I usually see it as like, the golden white light kind of washing over you and kind of like washing through like the chakras and stuff like that. And this time, for whatever reason, I just got this sense of like rose quartz crystal that he was using. And then he physically like implemented the rose quartz like into my heart. And I was just like, what is happening here? Like that was really intense. So that one was really, really cool. But yeah, it's this whole like guided meditation journey, and you can do all kinds of healing in there. It's really powerful.
Wow, that does sound powerful. Do you feel like accessing these places brings intuitive abilities online for you and your clients? Like, because I can just imagine that they are able to connect with their helper beings more easily after having that type of experience. Like, it's all of a sudden like it breaks them open to this, like, oh, wow, this is real.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helped me personally. And I've also noticed that when I'm in Ibiza, my psychic, I don't want to say my spiritual stuff because I feel like it's a little bit different, but like my psychic hits that I get are far less than when I'm back here, back home. Like since I've been back the past, I don't know, week, not even week and a half, I can tell like my psychic intuition is just like so spot on, so quick. So I can tell a difference with me based on the location in which I'm in, which is interesting. And
Wow, that is really interesting.
yeah, and because last year before I went out to Ibiza, like there was a lot that was going on, a lot of like paranormal activity, like it was just incessant. And then when I got to Ibiza, I was like, why isn't any of this stuff happening? Like I was like really tapping into it last year. And yeah, not so much in Ibiza. Like, I mean, I'd have like my meditations and connect with like my guides and like deities and things like that. That was fine, but it wasn't on the same level. And now that I'm back, I'm yeah, re-tapping back into it. So as far as clients kind of tapping more into that, the Akashic journeys that I'm doing is a bit of a new thing that I'm working with clients on. I've done a lot of it on my own, and now I'm ready to kind of help other people with that. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. But yeah, I think, even just in conversations with me, people start to realize like their own intuition because of, how I'm explaining stuff in my day-to-day life, that this was my intuition, that other people are starting to like recognize that they have that too, and it's not just, random thoughts or whatever.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible because again, it's just another source of empowerment for your clients. Like for me personally, the more I do the work, the more intuitive downloads that I get. And there are days where it's like it just doesn't feel real. You get wrapped up in the 3D, you get wrapped up in everything going on in the world. But like for your clients to be able to open that portal to like doing it themselves,
Mm.
like I want you to need me. I want to be a guide for you. I want to be your coach. I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like I want to support you, but my end all goal is like that you realize that all the answers are within you. And that's such a pivotal point because I think a lot of I think a lot of people are looking for that turnkey awakening. And it
Yeah.
is not like I was here and now I'm going there. Do you feel like it's much more about like alchemy and integration?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with integration because like we can understand like these concepts, right? But it's a matter of practicing them in our real life. And what happens is the universe tests us to see, did you learn this lesson? And it's really hard with a lot of things. And stuff will keep coming back up that we have to kind of prove that we have learned this lesson. And it's going to get progressively harder to see where we are in that healing. And this one healer had told me years ago, and this has always stuck with me. She says, you're going to get the same lesson in better packaging to see if you've learned your lesson. And I've seen this play out with like guys that I meet, relationships or whatever, where like, I've got this pattern that keeps repeating, which is unfavorable. But then you meet another guy that's better looking, more successful, has got like all these things. And then you're like, it's the same thing over and over. He just looks better. So it's so spot on. And it's a matter of how quickly do you recognize these things happening? Are you going to deal with it in a better way than you have in the past? So it's like these little tests from the universe. And all it is that integration of these lessons and breaking these cycles and patterns.
Do you think that people misunderstand karma?
Yeah. There's a lot, I think, within spirituality that people kind of might misunderstand. Yeah.
Yeah, like thinking of it as a punishment or
Mm.
feeling like yeah, like a punishment. I mean, like that's the first thing that really strikes. What would you say to someone who is seeing that karmic cycle, like, and they don't know? I mean, let's assume that they're aware of it. What type of advice would you give to somebody who is experiencing that guy show up in better packaging over and over again? Like, clearly there's something going on with them, right?
Yeah, it's showing up as a lesson that, you just haven't learned yet. And it's the universe's way of trying to kind of nudge you along to this deeper healing and this growth so that you can move past it and start attracting the right things in life, right? So my whole thought is for manifestation, instead of doing all these like silly woo woo things that you see like on TikTok or whatever, it's these deep seated soul lessons and karmic cycles. So when you actually focus on doing this work, if you really are looking to attract the man of your dreams, right? And you keep getting the same guy over and over, it's the universe's way of making sure that you're healed and you're ready for that bigger manifestation, or you're going to fumble the bag, right? So if you really want what it is you say you want, you have to go through this healing to break these cycles, to start coming at these situations um, in a more healed way, to then become aligned for what it is you're really looking to attract in life. So it's not a bad thing. It's just the universe's way to make sure that you're ready for the better thing.
So tell me a little bit more about your book and what inspired you to pursue that project, because that's awesome. I think that that is just really, really a powerful move to author something. Tell me more about that.
So I've always been a bit of a creative writer, and it just kind of came up in a really bizarre situation years and years ago. And everyone has always praised me for my writing, that I just have a really special way of putting words together. And through all this spiritual healing that I had been doing and all the different things that I was studying and looking into and piecing together, I just saw all these really unique patterns where everything is just so interconnected, and it's on just a whole nother level. Like, people do not understand how intricately interconnected everything is with these soul blueprints that I was talking about, right? With the astrology, the human design, all these different factors for us individually, but then also for us with everybody else that we're meeting in our lives. It's so interconnected because you'll see these patterns in your profiles with other people in your life, because they've come into your life to teach you a lesson. You're like soul family, right? There's a reason why you're meeting, there's a reason why you're having these experiences, and you'll see overlaps with their profiles because you're both meant to teach each other something, right? Or you're highlighting something within each other. And then when you start going into like the akashics and the past lives, it's just unbelievably intertwined. And I want to kind of showcase this to people to understand. And then also being able to bridge this gap of spirituality with the quantum physics and Buddhism and how it's all like intertwined. And you can explain spirituality with science for those that might not necessarily be believers. Yeah, there's just so much to it. And I think being able to piece that together with real life personal experiences, it's been really powerful because I've shared, certain chapters that I've written so far with people, and I've gotten really amazing feedback that they've said, like, I've had these experiences and I never knew how to put it into words until I read this. This makes so much sense. So I know I'm onto something. And I also know that I've lived a very colorful life and I've got just insane stories, especially after being in Ibiza for so long. It's just absolutely mental. Some stuff is not going to make the book, but I do think with all the crazy stuff that's happened, there is a strong spiritual undertone to all of it as to why it happened, right? So while some of the stories on the surface level might not sound very pleasant, there's spiritual lessons within them that are very important and how it's all interconnected.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that telling your story as a healer is absolutely pivotal, not just for the brand that you're trying to build, but even just for your own like qualifying that you are meant to be a healer, qualifying that you're meant to be a light worker, because all the shit that you went through gave you a doctoral degree in that kind of healing. So what would you say to somebody who's struggling to tell their story? Because there are quite a few. I have quite a few clients that I work with that they're healers or they're light workers or they're doing some type of spiritual work, but they don't want to put their story out there and really make it personal.
Yeah. It's tough because I'm very much the same way. So I know that that's something that I struggle to overcome with, to kind of be more personal online. Um, so writing the book and telling these stories, once that's kind of like out, that is terrifying for me. That's terrifying. And I pieced together this year why that's terrifying for me. Which I think is interesting. Years ago, when the internet first came out, when I was in middle school, high school, something like that, I remember getting in a lot of trouble for stuff that I had posted on the internet. And I remember, like, you know, just the wrong people can find you on the internet. So I became really, really private with what I share. I don't put my real name on the internet. So I've kind of really been protected about what I share publicly. So now it's this, like, you have to kind of overcome that and be okay with sharing these stories online and not feeling like you're going to get punished or bullied or just anything else. So yeah, it's a major fear, but I think it's important. And once you share it kind of a bit more privately with certain people that you get this wonderful feedback from, I think that helps you kind of get over that hump, that there are people out there that need to hear what you have to say. And the people that don't like what you have to say, well, they're not the right people for you anyway.
Yeah, I think that that's really beautifully said. And the people that are meant to connect with you will, and you just
Mhm.
have to kind of share your truth because your truth is, I mean, there are people that are going through exactly the same thing, you
Mhm.
know? So now that you're back in the States, is there any difference in the way that you're running your business? Like what shift?
Um, I'm taking a little bit of a break to kind of like reset and regroup just because I'm trying to get acclimated back here right now. So my focus is going to be with like doing online coaching and creating courses. because I know I'm not going to be back here forever. So I really want to kind of cultivate something that I can do from anywhere in the world and kind of travel and go from there. So I'm trying to really hone in. I've got so many different ideas and things that I want to do that I'm wanting to just narrow it down to just a couple of those things that I can focus on and finish. Um, so one of the things that I've been drawn to the most right now are these cosmic blueprint readings for people. Because I think even if you don't do coaching with me from there, this is a really powerful tool for you to have for yourself. And then you can dive into that even further on your own. So that's something that I really want to focus on now that I'm back here. And then now I'm doing these like Akashic journeys with clients as well, because I've recently discovered that that's something that I need to start sharing with other people instead of just doing it on my own. So that's another avenue that I want to focus on, is doing my coaching initially with like a 90-minute session would include, 45 minutes of regular coaching, and then like a 30-minute session of like energy healing to kind of work on any blockages or anything there. And now I want to do either the energy healing or the Akashic journey there, because I think the Akashic is just it's so powerful. So I'm really wanting to weave that into what I'm doing more.
So when you're not working with clients, about how much time are you spending per week working on your business?
Oh God, it's so time consuming because I'm a perfectionist. But B, it's just like there's so many different like layers to it. There's the social media, there's like the email marketing, there's, keeping up with the website if you change anything, which I still need to update that for a number of things that's on my to-do list. And finding time where you have that creative flow to start working on the book, because I have to be in the flow. Like if it's not flowing, I'm not going to sit at a computer and try and force it. Um, but it can consume all of your time. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent well, you and I have had some really interesting conversations, because trying to line up this interview, there was a day that we had a cow get out and I had to cancel our interview to go chase a cow. And life is happening, but it's a lot. And last night I spent from the kids went to bed at like 8:30 and I stayed up until midnight doing updates on my website. So I think, but what you said that like resonates so true for me is I have to feel it, and to really honor, like, if I'm in a creative place or if I'm just trying to effort through to knock this thing off of my to-do list. And like, I don't know, my biggest piece of advice is to really be in tune with that. What do you say to other business owners that are just like just trying to paddle through and do the most?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to do it when it feels right. Like I've had periods recently in this past week and a half where I just get really exhausted. I don't know if it's like continued jet lag or what it is right now, but I'm just like, I need a nap and I'm not a napper. So I'm like, as much as I just want to push through and work on this, my body needs the rest. My mind needs the rest. So being able to listen to your body and honor that, and just know that you'll be in a better space once you're rested to push forward and work on that.
And so, other than the book, do you have anything else that you're working on, or any goals coming up for 2025?
Yeah, I have a big project that I I have in mind. I have no idea at what point this will begin to manifest, because it's really big. So I'm wanting to spend a lot of time piecing together this business proposal and find some investors for this big project. And it was a friend of mine's mom. I was having a conversation with a couple of weeks ago, that I was telling her like all my visions and what I'm good at. And, I want to do this, but it's kind of like this long-term goal and blah, 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 blah. And she was like, Samantha, this is what you need to be doing. Like, all you need is money. And I go, yeah, I know. And she goes, no, you just need an investor. And I'm like, I just need an investor. I was like, it's that easy. But it's basically like a culmination of everything that I've done, all of my like professional work experience, all of my spiritual stuff, retreats, the yoga, like everything mashed up in one amazing project. And I don't want to say too much yet, but it's really huge. It's really huge.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think one of my things, like I've got just such big visions that I think all this time I've just been playing too small because I do have big visions. So I want to start really kind of moving in that direction because I know I can make it happen and I know it would be amazing. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And it just clicked through this conversation randomly with my friend's mom in the kitchen over some wine. And I was like, I just need an investor. It's that simple.
Random, not random.
So that's one of my big focuses that I want to to work on for the upcoming year and see where that goes.
Yeah, super cool. We'll have to have you back on to talk about an update and especially when the book drops. So this has been amazing. Samantha, if people want to find you and learn more about you and get in touch, where should they go?
I would suggest they go to my website. It is samantharae.co.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a great conversation and exciting stuff to come.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.